On the left side of the road here, you can look down from the top of the hill and see Las Vegas, Nevada. And panning over to the right, you can see Nellis Air Force Base. Nellis has its own fair share of aliens in the military because it's the gateway to the Nevada test site and to Groom Lake, Nevada. And what we're really planning on seeing on this road trip is the town of Mercury, the only closed city in America. And to get to Mercury, you first have to go through the town of Indian Springs. And in Indian Springs is Creech Air Force Base, which takes up most of the town. And in reality, Creech was created in the early 1950s for all of the testing, the atomic bomb testing, that was taking place just north of Las Vegas. But if you take a look around now, it has become a base where all of the drone operators operate out of. These drones are flying in places like Pakistan, Syria, Iraq, and as recently as 2014, some of the old airstrips that were used for the town of Mercury were used in the testing of surveillance drones, presumably civilian surveillance drones. And for as scary a reputation as Creech has among military members, we joke that aliens are living in the hangars there. As much of a reputation as it has, it really does have a pretty shoddy security system. And just before 2010, an airman brought a flash drive in and put a keylogger on the computers. And for an unknown length of time, every keystroke that was made was sent off to somebody else. It was a spying operation. And of course, the commander is going to come forward and say that the mission has not been impacted at all, but we don't know to what extent and what information they got, because revealing that would just reveal exactly what we don't want anybody to know. And this base was created again in the early 1950s as a part of a Cold War effort for the Korean War and testing atomic weapons. Dozens of them were tested in the Nevada test site, but nowadays this whole area has moved more towards the testing of drones. And as we continue, you see that most of the area on this base is devoted to power generation. But this is the area where I first saw the Mercury city of Mercury. It's the only closed village in America, and as you come up, this is exactly where atomic testing would have taken place, and you can see in old films where the mushroom clouds would have been. It's at the southern corner of Nevada, near the California border, in the Nevada test site, and actually it's larger than Rhode Island, and it's a very top secret area. I've heard rumors that the road goes right up to Groom Lake, and these shots were actually taken at the same test site done by the scientists who were working in the village of Mercury. And he's been blasted in the face there by very highly radioactive dust. And their orders were to, as soon as the dust retreats, basically charge. And they got to within 900 meters of this ground zero. And the army was supposed to study the psychological effects of it, but they took decades and decades before they ever awarded them any money. And in fact, when you Google the name of this test, it comes forward with a lot of results of you may be entitled to cancer compensation for nuclear testing between 45 and 62. And these tests would have taken place if you would have driven through this checkpoint right here, which is now mostly abandoned, or so they say, and up into Groom Lake, which it says that the road goes right through here to Groom Lake. You would have arrived at this testing area. And this village, at one point in the 1960s, had as many as 10,000 people living in it, all, or most of them, soldiers or scientists working in nuclear experiments. In 1962, it had an airport created at it, and this was called the Desert Rock Airport, and it was constructed solely, or it would appear solely, for the visit of John F. Kennedy. And we don't really know what Kennedy did at this place, but we know that the airport was made there, and that to some extent it still exists. And in this video, the village is mostly behind this layer of rocks. You can't see it on the approach, but this is the communication system that's been set up for the village. You can see the radar dishes here, but if you continue right down past it, it says no services. It doesn't say no trespassing, and it doesn't seem like a very big draw to it. It's not as much like Area 51, where you have all these signs saying extraterrestrial highway. This is the only closed town in America, the only town that civilians can't go. It is a town devoted to scientific research, but it is very, very low profile naturally. And I drove down the exit on this highway, and basically I got very spooked. I saw that there was a gate in the way, and I saw that it was guarded by some army guys, but they were a couple hundred meters away. And eventually, I just put my camera down because you can drive up to it and drive around because it looks just like any other exit on the highway, and you're not going out of your way to the distance that you would to the back gates of Area 51. But as you drive a little bit forward, you can get a clearer vantage point of the city behind the rock layer that I was talking about earlier. And these would all, apparently now it's mostly abandoned, but this would all house the scientists working on these top secret nuclear projects, and it's still managed by a skeleton crew of military members to guard it and scientists that work on the projects. And all around here, you would have nuclear testing taking place.